Welcome back to Season Liberally. Today we are going to be roasting beets and constructing a roasted beet salad with a little bit of walnut and some goat cheese. It's going to be great. Stick around. So today we are going to be making a roasted beet salad. Until I was an adult, I really didn't like beets very much because most of the time growing up, the beets that were served to me were served on a plate with some sort of pink fluid that went with them. They were almost always simmered or boiled or pickled. They never really had a lot of flavor to them, and they always had kind of a gross texture, tastes a little like dirt. They really genuinely were unappetizing. But once I really learned how to prepare beets, I'll tell you, I think they're amazing. Now, there's a possibility that you were served them as a child and you'll taste them now even as I prepare them and you'll say, I still hate them. And there's just going to be a flavor profile that's just not going to agree with you. That's a possibility. But I have changed a lot of people's minds with this recipe. So let's get started. So the first thing we have to do is we have to wash these. These are going to be roasting in the oven. But what we want to do is we want to trim them and we want to wash them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them over to the sink, wash them off. Now they're going to have some dirt on them and some grit, and I'm going to try to get as much of that off as I can. I'll use a scrub brush, and I will try to a great tool for this will be a vegetable brush. But you want to scrub them quite good so that you can get all the grit out of there. If you get all the grit out of there, it makes the cleaning process super easy later on. So I'm going to take these over and get them washed. Okay, so our beets have been washed. Now you're not going to get everything off of these, and that's okay, right? You're not even trying to get everything off. You're just trying to get rid of the loose dirt that these grow in. And what we're going to do is we're going to wind up trimming two ends of these if they need it. This one definitely needs it, so we're going to nip off one of these ends here. Just take the little piece of that end off, and then we are going to nip off this root end, okay? And it's going to look like that inside. We're going to set these on the side after they've sort of had that root end cut off. Now this one doesn't necessarily need it. It doesn't have like a big long tail on it, so it's not necessary to nip the end of it off. I'm just going to cut here like so, cutting the root end of the beet off, okay? And basically you want to just like look where it stops being ragged, right? You can see that this is pretty ragged in here. You want to cut right below where it starts being ragged. That's where all your dirt's going to be anyway, if there's any on here left. So you want to cut all that off if you can. Now this one also has this piece on the end here. I'm going to get rid of this because again, it's ragged, it probably has some dirt in it. And then this here, there's another piece, another root piece. And then this cut off like so. So what we have is our beets ready to go. Now I'm going to encourage you to probably wear gloves for this. You're going to stain your hands if you don't. If you're quick, you might not, but I wouldn't chance it. I would just try to wear gloves. That's probably the easiest way to make sure your hands don't turn super red. So all this takes to get these beets cooked is a 350-degree oven. That's 350 convection, 375 conventional. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my beet and set it right into the center of my aluminum foil. Then I'm going to cup my hand underneath it, right? And I'm essentially going to make a little bowl out of it, okay? You see? Got a little bowl I've made. To that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour in olive oil. I'm going to cover it, right? A nice good maybe tablespoon and a half of olive oil in there. Then I'm going to take kosher salt. I'm going to pour some kosher salt in there. And then I'm going to set it down and crack some pepper in there. Then I'm going to take my little package here and I'm going to fold up the top like so and then just crimp it at the top like this, okay? Then I'm going to take that and set that onto a sheet pan where it's going to go in the oven. I'm going to finish all these up and throw them in the oven. All right, my beets are ready to go in the oven. They have been crimped. They are separated out. If you have a ton of beets that you're making, don't don't put them all so close together so they can't get enough heat in the oven. You want to make sure that they get surrounded by heat on all sides. You could probably fit about 8, about this size, on one of these sheet pans. More than that, just doing an extra sheet pan. These are going to cook for about, I'm going to set my watch for about 45 minutes to start. Then we're going to test them. To test these, to figure out if they're done, we're going to find the largest one. And so the largest one is probably one of these two. What I'll do is I'll take a paring knife and I will drive it in as like all the way down. And if I pick it up and it's still attached, that means the beet isn't completely done. It should slide out. Once it slides out, the beet's finished and you can pull them out of the oven. But start checking them around 45 minutes, but they can cook for as long as like an hour and 15 minutes, depending. Okay, what does it look like when they're not ready? Okay. It's still really hard. I couldn't even get it all the way through, right? Doesn't come off. That's not ready, okay? Still needs some time. And these won't overcook, right? I mean, you can clearly overcook them, but if you're waiting for the big one to get done and the small one kind of is already done already, it's not going to be damaging. It's not going to be the worst thing that ever happened. But these still need some time. For this recipe, we're going to need some walnuts. I have some halved walnuts here. Now, a half is a little too big, right? You're not going to want to have a whole half a walnut that you're going to put in your mouth. This is kind of the perfect size, right? This is about a quarter size of a walnut. This is kind of the perfect size. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take and break with my hand, grab some, break them, put them in, right? So they'll be, I take halves and I crush them. Crushed are fine. You don't want to go too fine on this because if you go too fine, what you're going to have is you're going to have walnut dust, and that's not good. You want to have chunks of walnut. So as you can see, nice chunks of walnut for my salad here. I'm going to run this into the oven, 350. Watch it, 5 minutes, check it, and then every minute. Nuts have a real easy tendency to just overcook very quickly, so just be careful with them. Check them every minute after 5 minutes. All right, 5 minutes exactly, and you can see that they are browned but not black, and that's what you want. I'm going to pull them out of here so they don't continue cooking on this pan, but this is going to be really nice for the salad. That roasted flavor is going to add a lot to it. To this salad, we're also going to have goat cheese, and if your goat cheese is pretty firm like mine is, you can always take a fork and smash it down into chunks, right? If I do this, then it kind of crumbles, and you want these what you want more than anything is crumbles on this salad. You do not want to have like a big old honking piece. The crumblier it gets, the better off you're going to be. So as you can see, it didn't take much. I had a nice firm chunk that I just kind of squashed a little bit with a fork, and it essentially turned into crumbles, which is what I want in the end. While we wait for our beets to finish cooking, we are going to make our vinaigrette for this dish. So to start out, I'm going to add a third of a cup of balsamic vinegar, and to that, a good, nice round tablespoon of mustard. Okay, I love using mustard in dressings. Mustard brings out it has a lot of flavor, and what it really does is it emulsifies the dressings very nicely. So I like to use mustard whenever I can. I'm also going to add just a tiny bit, maybe a teaspoon or so of maple syrup. The beets are going to have a nice flavor, but this is going to add another little level of sweetness. It's going to be really nice, especially with the sharpness of the goat cheese. So I'm going to add to that 1 cup of oil. About 3/4 of a cup of it is going to be a neutral oil. I'm using grapeseed oil. You can use whatever you like as a neutral oil. I'm going to add some olive oil to it, maybe almost a 1/4 cup. But to that, I'm also going to add some walnut oil, enough to bring it up to a full cup. So you don't need a ton of this walnut oil. It's pretty powerful. I'm actually going to salt and pepper this first. I want to salt and pepper it so that so that the salt has an opportunity to dissolve in the vinegar. All All right. Now, slowly add my oil. And there is my balsamic vinaigrette. Now the good thing is that the beets themselves will be a dark color. This will be a nice dark color to go with it. Let me give it a taste, see if it's seasoned properly. Yeah, that's great. That's going to be really wonderful in this, and you get a lot of great flavors in there. There's a little tiny edge of sweetness, and then also that walnut oil, which is really rich. So we're going to put this on the side, we'll put it in the fridge. Our beets still have to cook and then cool. It's a great opportunity to make your dressing early so your flavors can mellow a little. So we're going to go put this in the fridge and wait for our beets to finish cooking and then cool. Beets have been going for about an hour and 5 minutes. Yep, we're done. Okay. These have got to sit on the counter for about an hour before you even want to mess with them. What we're going to do is we're going to peel them after we're done. But you don't want to do it while it's hot, so just leave them alone. And if you haven't invested in gloves yet, you're going to want to, because this next part, you're going to get your hands nice and pink if you don't. All right, so we let these sit for a little while to cool down. And we are going to take them out of their little wrapper here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my knife, the side of my knife, and I'm just going to drag it across the beet. And as I do, the skin is going to peel right off. If I come across any parts that are hard, I will cut them off. But I'm basically just going to cut around the whole beet. Just pulling the skin off. And I'm going to work around all these beets until they're all completely skinned. Any of the hard parts, I'm just cutting right off. That's not going to be edible anyway, so just get rid of it. As you can see, it's just falling off the side. If you cooked them properly, it just falls right off the side if you drag your knife across it. If a piece does get through and you miss it, because sometimes it's hard to see, that's okay because we washed the beets earlier. So, and that's why that step is super important. All right, so I have cleaned the beets, pulled all the skin off these beets. And so what we have is, we have the beets completely cooled, ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the beets and we're going to cut them into bite-sized pieces. Pieces that you're going to want on the end of your fork if you're making a salad, right? You don't want to leave these, have these, that's too much, that's too big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by having them, and what I'm going to do is probably cut them into pieces about this size, right? This is about the right size you want on the end of your fork. So I'm going to try to cut all the beets into something this size. Maybe a little smaller, maybe a little larger, but in the end, I want to make sure that it's not so big that you're trying to, you've got to cut it with a knife or something like that. You want to be able to put one of these pieces in your mouth. And that's always important whenever you're whenever you're preparing the salad, whenever you're putting something on a plate that might not have a knife along with it, you want to make sure that you put pieces that can be easily stabbed with a fork or put on a spoon, and you don't have something that's so big that they can't contend with it. But cut these however you think it's going to look nice on the plate, There's a bunch of ways you can cut it. You could dice them if you wanted, like a big dice would look good. All right, so now we want to construct our salad. I'm going to take about 3/4 of a beet worth of slices here. And so I'm just going to set about 3/4 worth on a plate. Maybe one more. That's about, I don't want to give somebody too much. You don't want to give somebody way too much. Now I'm going to that, add a touch of this goat cheese, right? I want to add a little goat cheese to it, and then I want to put a little goat cheese on the side. And then some of this roasted walnut on top, on the side. Allows people to reach over, take what they want. And then let's just dress this. Perfect. All right, let's give it a shot. I'll get each component here. Toasted walnut in there with that walnut oil. And then there's that sweetness we added. Remember we added just a tiny bit of that maple syrup to this? There's a really nice sweetness. And the beets have so much flavor. There's so much like umami flavor in those beets. They're just really mellow. And then the goat cheese adds so much creaminess to this. This is really an outstanding salad. Couple of ingredients. All it takes is time. Yeah, it's a great balance. Everything really balances well on the plate. This is a great salad. I hope you roast some beets at home. I hope you give them a try. You could put these on the side of your plate too. You know, you don't have to put them in a salad if you wanted. You know, take them when they're warm. If you can get the skins off of them ahead of time, warm them back up, and then you could just throw a little butter on there, some fresh herbs, you know, dill or chive, put them on the side of a plate. They're delicious. Roasted beets is the way to go. You're getting that water out of the beet and you're removing any of that off flavor, and it just tastes wonderful. So check it out. Hope you roast some beets. I hope you like, subscribe, comment below. Let me know what vegetable you didn't like as a child that you now like as an adult. And be sure to share this with your friends. I'll catch you next time. Season liberally.